Yeah, so I was about early 20s. I was in that range when I first got a diagnosis for mental health. And I didn't believe that it was mental health because it started as a panic attack for me. And to me, that felt physical. And if anyone in here has had a panic attack, it feels very scary. I didn't know what it was. I thought I was having a heart attack. I was feeling heart palpitations, sweating, my limbs, I was feeling numbness in my limbs, headache, and nauseous, all these kind of things, and I didn't know what it was. So I ended up going to a general physician. The general physician asked me for all the symptoms and told me, oh, that's no big deal. You have generalized anxiety disorder. So I'm like, what's that? And he didn't really, I feel like he didn't really know too well. It was just, these are the symptoms, this is your diagnosis. And then he said, yeah, he said, here, take this Xanax. I took the Xanax and it worked for what it was supposed to work for in terms of calming down the symptoms. But I wasn't learning anything about why they were there and the toolkit. I didn't learn anything about a toolkit of what to do when these symptoms arise, aside from taking the Xanax. And just like how you described with the street drugs, it started to lose effectiveness over time. It worked for a time, and then they said, okay, we need a stronger prescription dose for you, and then stronger dose, and then it got to a point where I wasn't leaving my house unless I had it in my pocket. Because I'm like, the only thing that helps me with these panic attacks is this Xanax. Therapy was not even recommended to me, so I didn't do it. I just kept going and taking the Xanax, and it wasn't getting any better because it was starting to affect me at work. They saw that it was having effects on me because I was having these panic attacks at my job. And I would just kind of go to the bathroom and try to get in a space where I'm away from people, because anyone who's experienced panic attacks can tell you, you feel like it's embarrassing and everybody is just looking at you. Even though it might not even be the case that it's obvious to people on the outside, that's how you feel in your head. So I would just go to the bathroom and try to wait it out until it stops and then go back out to work, and it became really noticeable. And eventually, like I said, I didn't work. I got a diagnosis of general anxiety disorder, clinical depression, and panic disorder. And it also became an agoraphobia. And if anyone knows about agoraphobia, your safe space, or what you feel is your safe space, starts to shrink. Where it's just normal for everyone to just go outside and go in your car, drive places and go places, and then you start to develop this irrational fear of perhaps what's going to happen to you when you leave your house. And then you reinforce that by not leaving your safe space, and then it starts to shrink and shrink over time. So I spent a lot of time in my house, in my room specifically, close to a year, in my bed, just having these panic attacks. One day I decided I need to go to the hospital. A lot of people have the ambulance called for them because they're having some kind of symptoms or delusions or whatever it may be that somebody feels like they need to go. I said, I need somebody to help me. So I told my parents that. They took me to the hospital, and I was in there, and I didn't know anything about hospitalizations. I really just went there so that somebody could say, this is what's wrong with you, and this is the steps. And when I got in there, I found out that once you sign certain paperwork, they change your stay from voluntary to involuntary. So within 20 minutes of being there, I wanted to get out because of what I was seeing in there. I said, this was a mistake. And they said, once you determine you're not a danger to yourself or others, then you can go. And I said, when will that be? And they're like, we don't know. But the one thing that was the best about that experience for me, which was only 10 days, but felt like much longer than that, was that I got a doctor, a psychiatrist in that hospital, and she asked me to write down all my symptoms on a piece of paper. And there was a lot of them. I lost a huge amount of weight. I was experiencing acid reflux, migraines, heart palpitations. I thought that I had some kind of disease or something, some physical thing that they hadn't found yet. So she had this book, and she told me to turn to a certain page, and the page had a heading that said anxiety disorders, and then everything that I listed as a symptom was on that page. So I had also gone to the ER several times for these physical symptoms and panic attacks. So they tested my body for everything. They did endoscopy, colonoscopy, chest x-ray, head. They did some kind of MRI, and they didn't find anything, which was really difficult for me because I was hoping they would find something physical and just treat that. So she was like, everything on this paper here can be a result of having very severe anxiety. And one of the peer counselors that came in there to speak to us asked me if I wanted to do peer counseling, if I would consider getting the certification for that. And like I said at the beginning, at first I was like, no, because I felt like this is not what I ever wanted to do with my life. I just want to get better and go back in the world and do what I was doing before. But I find that all these experiences that I had in terms of being at that low point, that basement, all the different doctors that I went through, and all my experiences coming back and getting back to where I am now, I couldn't just pretend like all of that stuff didn't exist. And in fact, I know that there's many people in that position now, and having somebody talk to them and tell them, I have been where you've been, and I got out of that, and there's hope for you to be able to get out of that too. I felt like that was now my new mission and my new purpose. So I got the certification. I started volunteering at the organization that I was going to for the therapy. They actually ended up giving me a position there. At that time, they didn't have any peer counselors. So I was the first peer counselor that they ever hired in there. It was a small role. I led a group.